the songs were written basically for the TV show. And then after the first album, they started bringing in other songwriters. Initially, it was Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart and some other staff writers, Carole King, Jack Keller, Barry Mann, Cynthia Weil, people like that. And then all of a sudden, for the second album, they got people like Neil Diamond and Lieber and Stoller, and they got people like Harry Nilsson, people like Carol Bayer Sager. So people started to have an outlet for their song, because you've got to understand, in the mid-'60s, most bands were singing their own material. So all these songwriters, the people I've mentioned, were sitting around twiddling their thumbs, because all the bands were doing their own material. So all of a sudden there was a place for them to put their material, and the Monkees was one of those avenues.
Here we come, walking down the street. We get funniest looks from everyone we meet.
Donnie actually selected the songs and the producers. That's about it. He said, they'll do great with this song, give it to Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart to do. Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart wrote such and such a song. Carole King wrote such and such a song. Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil wrote such and such a song. Neil Diamond wrote them. And give Neil Diamond songs to Jeff Barry. Jeff Barry would take them into the studio, make the background tracks, fly them to the West Coast, and Mickey would sing on them. So the song selection, the arrangements. Now it's a very different kettle of fish when it's the four of us in a studio, because the arrangements grew out of what we could and could not do as a band to play. We played sometimes 50 takes of a song while we worked on the arrangement, tried to make it, well, no, it should do this, it should turn here, and there should be a break, and you should take a thing there, and all that stuff is mapped out ahead of time in the pro ranks. The major producers that Donnie hired would go to an arranger, and he'd say, well, let's do this, and we'll have this, and the arranger would say, yeah, and then he'd write out all the parts and give them to the guitar players, and the guitar players would read off of the sheet music and go home. And that was the way they made records on Tin Pan Alley if you weren't in the group. And the way we made the record was the way you make the record if you're in the group, which is you're in the studio and you play and you say, let's not do that, and you actually carve out the arrangement as you work. I think, you know, I listened to that album. It's a garage band album, but it's not that bad for me. You could disagree.
We had absolutely nothing to say about what was being done on the music side of the project until we kind of had a Palace Revolt and got the right to have some control over the music. But until that point, no, nothing really to say about what was going to be recorded, nothing to say about who was going to record it or when. Very often, we would go in, and both David and I would do a version of a lead vocal, and then they would end up picking one or the other, and I couldn't tell you what their criteria was. You know, we were not privy to that sort of information, and but having said that, I mean, they made some pretty good choices, I think. You know, those songs stand up and the vocals stand up, but we were under an enormous amount of time pressure, if nothing else. I mean, we would be filming the television show 8-10 hours a day, or 10 to 12 hours a day. And then I would have to be going to the studio that night and record sometimes 2 or 3 lead vocals in one night. And there was a lot of pressure, and it was, you know, thank goodness I was so young. I'm not sure I could do it today. So yeah, I don't know, you know, whom, Don Kirshner, I suppose, and the producers and RCA and NBC, and all made a lot of those decisions for us until, like I say, we had the Palace Revolt and we started having some control over the music.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of my Monkee Deep Dive series. Today I am going to be talking about their second album, More of the Monkees. This was released on January 9th, 1967, and spent an incredible 18 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard charts. I'm going to repeat that. This album spent 18 weeks. 18 weeks at the top of the bill. This album at the top of the Billboard charts. And what's even more remarkable The album that this album knocked out of the number one position was the Monkees' debut album. The first two Monkees albums spent 31 weeks, 31 consecutive, why am I using this? 31 consecutive weeks at the number one spot. Holy Christ. It's unbelievable. It really is. A manufactured TV band had the number one album for 31 consecutive weeks. I am not making that up. It just blows my mind. But anyway, we're not here to gush over how incredible the Monkees' chart-topping success was. But to be sure, that blew my mind. When I read that, I was like, whoa, had no idea. I knew the albums were popular, but I didn't realize they were that popular. Holy smokes. Anyway, this album is, to me, weaker than their debut. This is a contender. Changes is going to be my least favorite Monkee album. This is going to be right above Changes. I'm not a huge fan of this album. There are songs that I like on it. The songs I like on this album, I really, really like. The songs that I don't like on this album are freaking terrible. They're awful. Some of the worst Monkee songs that they ever committed to tape. And so let's break it down. So anyway, the story behind the Monkees album is the first Monkees album went to number one, was a huge success. And so the musical director, Don Kirshner, who had dollar signs for pupils, was like, we got to rush another album out. We got to capitalize on the success of this band before the bubble burst. And so he rushed out a second album. The Monkees had no idea this album was even coming out. They were out on tour, and somebody's like, hey, you got a new album in the shop.
Somebody goes across the street to the mall and brings us back the album. It's the first we've seen it. And there we are in JCPenney clothes on the cover.
So they sent one of the roadies or somebody across the street, picked up the album, and when they looked at it, they were horrified. For one thing, this picture was part of a JCPenney ad that the Monkees had been roped into doing. So they're wearing their JCPenney clothes on the cover. They were mortified when they saw this album cover. And then they turned it over. They had no idea what songs were going to be on this album. And then the liner notes that were written by Don Kirshner speak glowingly of everyone except the Monkees. The Monkees are an afterthought on these liner notes. Don Kirshner is basically congratulating himself for all the success that the Monkees had to this point, and then proceeds to give credit to all of the songwriters who contributed music or songs for this album. Now, fair or not, the Monkees were righteously pissed off about it, and that ended up starting the ball rolling to get them the independence that at least Mike and Peter wanted in terms of controlling their musical output, having more participation in the recording sessions, in the songwriting, and that would yield their third album, Headquarters, which we will cover in the next video. But nonetheless, let's get into the music on this album. So it starts off with the song She. Love the song She. Kiss would cover it on, I believe it was the Hotter Than Hell album, but it is an amazing song. Maybe amazing is hyperbole. It's not a fantastic song, but it's a solid opening track. And there's a lot of organ on the up-tempo tracks on here, which kind of gives it a bit of an Animals, kind of a Manfred Mann, Doors type sound, if you will, a little bit. She's a great rocker, great opening song. Mickey nails the vocal. This song is written by Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart, who wrote a lot of the early Monkees hits. Then we have When Love Comes Knocking at Your Door, which is a Davy Jones song. And It's all right. It's kind of a jangly, mid-tempo, kind of a ballad. Davy Jones singing in his sweet little voice, and it's a bright, up-tempo, sugary, whatever you want to call it, bubblegum pop, whatever. That's what it is. It's not as offensive as some of the songs that he would go on to cover later, but that was written by Carol Bayer Sager and Neil Sedaka. I'm not a huge Neil Sedaka fan. Neil Sedaka I think he should be prosecuted for some of the songs that he has inflicted upon the radio waves over the years, but nonetheless, it is what it is. Then we have a Mike Nesmith composition, Mary, Mary, which is a great bluesy monkey song.
Mary, Mary, where you going to?
And as a matter of fact, the Paul Butterfield Blues Band actually covered this song before the Monkees ever did.
Mary, Mary, where are you going to? And Mary, Mary, can I go there too?
And fans of Paul Butterfield who were not aware that Mike Nesmith actually wrote the song were offended and like, how could the Monkees cover a sacred blues song that the Paul Butterfield... The arrangement that the Monkees do is a world away from the arrangement the Paul Butterfield Blues Band gave it, but it's an excellent bluesy, cool song that Mike Nesmith wrote. Absolutely love it. Then we have another Davy Jones, Hold On Girl. Does absolutely nothing for me. We got a little bit of organ on here. It's a substandard Monkee song. I really don't care for it at all. It's more up-tempo than some of the future tracks we would get from Davy Jones. It's not awful, but it's not great either. It's so far from being great. Just not crazy about that one. Then we have what is basically a 19th Nervous Breakdown ripoff with your Auntie Griselda. It's Peter Tork's first vocal on the album. The lyrics were written by Diane Hildebrand, and the music was written by Jack Keller. I don't know. Number one, I'm not a fan of Peter Tork's vocal. I'm not a fan of this arrangement. It's basically a Rolling Stones ripoff. It works okay in the series, and Peter Tork gets a little silly in the musical, instrumental, interlude, whatever you want to call it. But basically, he was told by Diane Hildebrand, yeah, just make some goofy, funny noises in the middle. I find it very annoying. I'm not a fan of this song at all. Then we have some garage rock from the Monkees. I'm Not Your Stepping Stone. And I don't care if you hate the Monkees, you have to love this song. This song kicks ass.
I'm not your stepping stone.
It's a song the Animals could have covered. You got that great organ. I love that almost kind of punkiness of it, this total sleazy garage, a little bit, poppy. The Monkees definitely give it some bubblegum pop flavor to it, but I love one of my favorite Monkee songs, I'm Not Your Stepping Stone. Call me crazy, but I love it. Side 2 opens up with another Davy Jones vocal. They were so in love with the Davy Jones vocals at this stage in their career. But it's a Neil Diamond composition. It's not bad. Look Out, Here Comes Tomorrow. I'd rather Davy Jones sing Neil Diamond than Neil Sedaka. So it's fine. It's sort of like not a favorite. I don't hate it. It's kind of in the middle. Neil Diamond's certainly written better songs. I just don't like the, where he starts calling off, Sandra, I love you. Mary, I love you. It's like, enough. All right, anyway. Then we have another great Mike Nesmith composition that he co-wrote with Roger Atkins. the kind of girl I could love. A little more countrified, to be sure, a lot more countrified than Mary Mary. Sort of, kind of another early country rocker from like Mike Nesmith, along the lines of like Sweet Young Thing. But I am a big fan. I love Michael Nesmith, and I love these early Nesmith songs. Then we have what has got to be the biggest abomination in the entire Monkees catalog, The Day We Fall in Love. And this is Davy Jones at his worst.
There'll be birds singing everywhere, and the wind will be blowing through your hair. I'll look into your eyes and wait.
When people say that they don't care for Davy Jones's songs, by and large, there are some there, and let me be fair, there are Davy Jones songs that I do like, but there are more Davy Jones songs that I absolutely detest, and this is at the bottom. This has got to be the worst Monkees song that they ever recorded, The Day We Fall in Love. It's terrible. How this made it onto this album, and I have an idea. They wanted all those preteen girls with hearts in their eyes, oh, Davy, to just swoon when they listen to this song. But it's horrible. All right. Anyway, enough about that. Then we have a Jerry Goffin, Carole King song, Sometime in the Morning, which has a Mickey vocal, which I do enjoy. It's a nice mid-tempo ballad. Mickey gives it a great vocal. It's a little bit of jangly pop, which I enjoy. Not overly sweet or sentimental, but it's very cool. You can see Carole King doing this song, so I like it a lot. Then song number 5 on side 2 is another lame, limp rocker. Laugh, ha, 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 ha. This song does nothing for me. It's definitely at the bottom of the worst Monkees songs. It's not catchy. It's an annoying chorus, annoying lyric, annoying backup vocals. The whole thing, I do not care for it at all. I frankly consider it terrible. Then we have I'm a Believer, another Neil Diamond composition, which, hey, went to number 1. Excellent, excellent song. Yeah, it hasn't been overplayed, absolutely, but I don't care. I remember hearing this on a 45 for the first time and totally digging it. And I still, when I hear this song, it takes me back to being a little kid, hearing this on one of my uncle's 45 singles and thinking it's great. And then that was the last time I thought about the Monkees for about 20 years, or, well, not 20 years, but at least 10, possibly 13 years before I took an interest in the Monkees again. So anyway, that's the album. Yeah, there's some hits on here, but there's a whole lot of misses. The fact that it spent 18 weeks blows my mind. And I think that speaks more to the popularity of the TV series than it does necessarily the quality of the songs on this album. So that's where I come out. Anyway, tell me I'm crazy. Tell me you're not a Monkees fan. Whatever you will. But, it's just not, if you're being honest with yourself, Monkee fan, it's not a great Monkees album. Is it the worst? No. But it's certainly near the bottom. So anyway, hope you're doing well. Hope you like the series. And I think we'll probably next one I do, I don't know if it'll necessarily be the next video I do, but the next Monkee Deep Dive I do, I promise you, will be Headquarters. Take care.